if I got too emotional to do it, what good would I be? I certainly had my times when I had to let out some of that grief in private. But as I say, I had to focus on the real thing here. The real thing is men were dying and they needed someone. I had been involved in the gay community since 1979, after our son came out, and he was 17 at the time. Our house became kind of a safe house for gay kids to hang out, particularly the guys. And I knew from my experience in the gay community, there would be some young men who didn't have family support. And I thought everybody should have somebody. So I decided to stop working and volunteer full-time. I think that Daryl and I first mentioned it back in maybe 82 or 83 when we read about it in New York and San Francisco, and wondering if we would ever know anybody that got AIDS. And unfortunately, we knew too many. Daryl was working with a young man at a restaurant, and Daryl told me that he had been diagnosed with AIDS and he hadn't told his family that he was gay. And his doctor suggested he see a therapist. And Daryl said, well, I know somebody you can talk to and she won't charge you anything. And so I went to see this young man in the hospital and we talked about it, and I was with him when he called his parents and told them. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from somebody I didn't know, but who was aware of my involvement in the gay community, and said his roommate was in the hospital with AIDS and also had not told his family. And would I go and help him with that, which I did. I said if I was invited, I would. And he asked me to come, and I did go down, and the same thing. I was with him when he told his parents. I think I read about it. I think I may have read about it in the Seattle Gay News, that they were forming some support groups for people with AIDS. And this was 1997. I was in the first group that was trained to facilitate support groups. At that time, we were meeting at a former bar on 15th Avenue, Northeast. I was focused on what I had been called to do, and that was to help people with AIDS. That was important. That was the important thing. That was the focus, not on the training. I would do it my own way, as I do most things my own way. I did several groups. I did newly diagnosed and parents of people with AIDS, mothers of people with AIDS, longtime survivors. I was doing 3 or 4 groups a week sometimes in the beginning. And then the one I was the most attached to is the longtime survivors, and that's the one I ended up doing for 20 years. And we start with a check-in, with all the guys just checking in to tell us how their week had been and what was going on with them. At one time, there were 16 people in the group, and I did have to buy a timer to give them a couple minutes to check in. Otherwise, the check-in took the whole 2 hours. It was very difficult for some of the guys that I was very attached to. But I had to keep focused on, this isn't about me. This is about them and what they need. And some of them needed someone to be there for them. I told anybody in the group that I would take care of anybody who didn't have someone to take care of them. There were times in the thick of things where I'd leave in the morning and I might go to one house and fix breakfast for someone and a lunch for them to have later, and then I go to the next house and maybe fix a dinner or something. I always had an egg carton mattress and a sleeping bag in my car in case someone was ill and I needed to stay over with them. But there were times I would leave and just tell my husband, I don't know when I'll be back, when I thought I might have to stay over with someone. And he always said, you do whatever you need to do, dear. You take care of your boys. I can take care of myself. He always called them my boys. The first one was fairly early on. He died in 1988. He was a young man. I think he was 22, but he looked like he was about 17. His mother was ill and unable to take care of him. And she asked me if I would go see him in the hospital, which I did. He was living up on Capitol Hill with a roommate. And I started taking him to all his doctor's appointments and spending a lot of time with him. And it got to the point where he could no longer go up the stairs to he and his roommate were on the second floor. And he couldn't make it up the stairs. And so someone said there was a group, there might be a group home that he could go to. At that time, there was a home on Capitol Hill that I think had 7 beds. And he said that he was not interested in a group home experience. And I'd become very emotionally attached to this kid. And so I said, well, why don't you just come stay with us? Which he did. He was there, I think he was with us about 3 months before he died. But I learned something through that. I grieved terribly for that young man. And I realized I could not get that emotionally attached and continue to do what needed to be done. I couldn't get so emotionally attached, it was like losing my own child, which is what it kind of became with Joe. I have a pretty good idea that there were at least 90 men who died in my groups. There was a lot of unused medications, and not only medications, but medical equipment things. You know, there was tubing and syringes and bandages and all those things too. The medications, I had 2 doctors that I would type up a list of the medications I had and fax it to them, and they would check the ones that they wanted, and I'd deliver those to them. And the rest of them, along with all the medical equipment stuff, I took to a medical missionary program. I don't know if anybody knew about it. You mean with my sharing the medications? I don't know if anybody knew about it, besides the doctors that I was in cahoots with and the medical missionary program. The protease inhibitors came out in 1996, and people stopped dying, luckily. The years before that, we were losing 1 a month, usually, from our support group, and it became more like 1 a year. And I continued to do the group up until, I think it was 2006, 2007. And it was down to 3 people. And I decided they didn't need me, and they thought they didn't need me. I think it was the most meaningful time in my life. It was really an honor to be able to be there with them at that time. It was impactful. I don't think I have found anything, even though I've been with End of Life Washington for 23 years, it hasn't been as close to my heart as the time I spent with AIDS.